Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and to my knitting podcast series. It is so wonderful to have you here with me today. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Samantha and I am the knitter and knitwear designer behind the Strikkechick. So it's the end of April now, which is crazy. The time flies so fast. But because we're a third of the way through 2023, I thought it would be a good time to just stop and take a little bit of a recap of what I have knit this year. And if you've been following the podcast, you will have seen all of these before, probably. You will have seen all of these before. If you're new, hi, hello, welcome. Please subscribe so you can stick around for more. But I am really excited to show you all of the really fun knits that I have cast off this year. So as a disclaimer, some of these were whips in 2022, but because I finished them in 2023, I'm counting them as like finished objects in 2023. And as always, we'll just start off with what I'm wearing, which was cast off in 2022, not 2023. This is the Waffle sweater by Knitting for Olive. So it's meant to be knit with 3 strands of their soft silk mohair, but I did not want to knit an all over mohair sweater. And I had yarn in my stash that I thought would work. That was Drops Kid Silk and Drops Baby Merino in the shade Burgundy for both. So yeah, I thought that using the 1 strand of Kid Silk mohair would give it just a little bit of fluff, but then also it would be a little bit more solid because of the Baby Merino. And I really like the way that it wears. It is super comfy. It's a great sweater for spring up in Tromsø, which is a little city in the Arctic Circle of Norway where I live with my fiance, Kevin. So yes, let's just get into it. I'll link the pattern for the waffle sweater down in the description as well if you want to knit one of your own. So the first finished object I have to show you is this. So if you've watched this podcast before, you'll be familiar with my concept of forever projects, which is basically what I call projects that take a really, really long time to cast off. And this was definitely one of those. This is the Innis skirt by Knits from Oslo. And all of these, I'll pop a little photo of me wearing it so you can see what it looks like on. But it's just a really, really pretty cable knit wrap skirt. It's called the Innis skirt because the designer behind Knits from Oslo was inspired by the Aran Islands off the coast of Galway, Ireland. And Innis, it's the Innis skirt because it's like Innis sheer, Innis more, and then I think there's a middle one that I'm not entirely sure what the name is, but I've knitted 2 of them, those 2, the biggest one and the smallest one. So this is the Innis skirt. Yes, it is knit in a thread of Drops Soft Tweed in the shade Marzipan, and a thread of Drops Kid Silk in the shade Light Beige. So the reason why I used Drop Soft Tweed in this skirt is because I've used Drop Soft Tweed before for my sample of the Solnedgang Sweater, which is my first ever knitwear design. And I have pointed out a number of times that Drop Soft Tweed doesn't pill. So the recommended yarn in this pattern was Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino and Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair. But I didn't really want, because I'm not aware of how Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino holds up against pilling, because yes, I've knit with it, but I've knit tank tops with it. So it's not really, like, it wouldn't have pilled as easily as a garment like a skirt. So I wanted to go with something that I knew was good and held up to friction and wear, and that for me was Drops Kid Silk. So I went with a shade that was in this kind of, I wanted it to be a little bit of a light browny beige, very versatile color, so I could wear it with a lot of things. You can see that it's got some really intricate, really pretty cabling. It's got cables on the back as well. So this took a lot longer to knit than it kind of looks like from this fabric, because there's a bit of a fold here. So there's more skirt. It's just wrapped around. And I actually, so at the end, you cast on stitches here, and then you knit it flat all the way down, and then you knit this ribbing at the bottom. And then at the end, you kind of fold the skirt over like it's supposed to be wrapped, and you pick up stitches for the the waistband, and then you knit 1 by 1 rib, and then you fold it over and insert some thick elastic so that it holds up well. And because I'm a little bit kind of like self-conscious about whether the wrap skirt kind of, because it's not very secure, right? It's very flimsy. So I just sewed it together. I don't know if you can see that. I sewed it together a little bit at the bottom, just so that it stays shut. There's a little bit of wrap that I left unsewn all the way at the, I don't know if you can see that, all the way at the very bottom. But yes, I mostly just kind of sewed it a little bit shut, not all the way, but just, enough so it doesn't like wardrobe malfunction. So I actually have not worn this out yet. I'm planning to tomorrow. So we'll see how it wears up for a trip out and about in Tromsø. But I really, really like it. I love the way that it fits. I picked up less stitches actually than intended for the waistband, just because I couldn't really get all the stitches. But I also knit with a 0.5, well, I forget what exactly size needle the pattern calls for, but I did use a 0.5 millimeter larger, so I figured it was okay. And then for the elastic, I just, I made sure it was a little bit bigger than my natural waist, and then I added that amount of elastic in. So I think it kind of fit well to what it's supposed to be. It's not the stretchiest elastic, it's just from my local yarn store. But I guess if you found a stretchier elastic, that might be a better option for the waistband, but it sure is sturdy and nice. So it's a bit of a shimmy to get into it, but it feels like it really sits nicely on my waist. But yeah, this is my first ever knit, not only skirt, but it's my first ever knit bottom piece. So it's kind of exciting to know that I can wear a head-to-toe knit outfit. That's kind of fun. So I'm looking forward to that, especially now in the spring, because we still need woolens for spring up in Tromsø, but it is kind of they're a bit lighter woolens, and you can wear, skirts and maybe shorts with some woolen tights under them and that kind of stuff. So I'm excited for this. I will be wearing this tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes. And hopefully I'll get to wear it many, many times again. Just put that over here. Okay. So the next finished object of 2023 that I have for you is a favorite in my wardrobe. This is the Farnam sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl, which was just the most fun to knit, and it's so, so nice to wear. I was a bit hesitant actually. I test knit this for Sophie, who is an incredible designer and just very, very supportive in the test knit she runs. So I highly, highly recommend testing for her. It's a great experience. I was a little hesitant though to knit this because I have a 73 to 74 centimeter bust, and her smallest size, it said that it would have over 100 centimeters around the bust area, and it does. So it's very oversized on me, but I love the fit. It's a really, really nice drop shoulder, top down design. And she has these short rows at the top that she's written it so that the stripes just line up perfectly. So it's like a work of art. And it's so classy. It's actually, I think it's inspired by a designer sweater that she bought at a shop she used to work at a number of years ago in Farnam, which is why she named it this. So yeah, I knit mine in Drops Flora and Drops Kid Silk in the shades Off-White and Navy Blue. So I use Navy Blue for the stripes, obviously, and Off-White for the main color. So it's very cute, very Parisian, very nice and light, but also warm. So it's a great transitional piece now that we still have snow, Actually, the snow was gone in Tromsø last week, and then over the weekend we got quite a big snowfall. So now the ground is covered in snow yet again. So it's back to winter for us, but it has still been a great transitional piece. I like that it has a rolled neckline, so it doesn't like choke you, kind of. It's very relaxed fit around the neck. And then she just has really nice details, like she has you do an Italian bind off on this ribbing, and it's a bit cropped. I think all of her sweaters are a little bit cropped, but I love cropped sweaters because they sit so well over dresses and my high-waisted jeans. But you can always knit it longer, and I think that would look really nice as well. It's so oversized that I don't think like it would sit nicely. It wouldn't like I don't know, like smother your hips for most of the sizes. So yeah, this is the Farnam sweater, and I absolutely love it. I'm gonna try to see if there's a better place for me to put the things I've already shown you than the floor. But unfortunately, I was not so smart in the way I set this up, so I'm just gonna cram them over here and remember that I already told you about them because they're not so nicely folded. Okay. The next sweater that I have for you is a pattern not a pattern, but a sweater that I've shown you on the podcast earlier this year. This is my Solnedgang sweater. It's what I'm thinking of calling it. So Solnedgang means sunset in Norwegian, and I wanted to call it that because when I was putting together my color palette, I was reminded of like sunset colors. So I was like, what a cute little name, because it's inspired by the colors of sunsets here in Tromsø, actually. So it was fitting, but I keep saying the name and it doesn't quite, I don't know, like sometimes the name just clicks, right? Like a lot of my designs, the air pullover, the Saleya vest, it just kind of clicks into place. But this one hasn't. So I'm not entirely married to the name, even though I've used the hashtag so much now on Instagram, and every time I talk about it, I call it the Solnedgang Sweater. But yeah, we will see. We will see. I still have some time to change it because I haven't put out the pattern. So this is basically a leftover fat mohair sweater that you will recognize if you have been around here for a bit. It's a top-down raglan style pullover, and it's got these little, I'm going to show you. It's got these increases along the raglan seam, and it has a kind of Fair Isle motif in a contrast color all the way to the bottom of the sweater. So I had a bunch of leftover yarn in my stash, leftover thick mohair yarn. I had Dallegarn Meek Påfugel, which is a yarn available from House of Yarn Norway. I had Børstet Alpaca from Solnedgang, also called brushed alpaca. And then I had some Drops Melody and what else? I think it was those. It was those yarns I had in my stash that were left over from other projects. And so I figured, well, I have enough to make a leftover sweater, so let's make one. And I was very inspired by the designer Anne Wenzel. She is Danish. She is extremely talented. I think she has a background in fashion. So she works at a fashion company and then she designs knitting patterns on the side. She's just an amazing designer. And she does incredible things with leftover yarn. So I took a little bit of inspiration from her spot sweater, which she has knit so many beautiful versions of. And I think there was even like a spot sweater make-along at one point with like people being encouraged to use their mohair scraps to make their own spot sweaters, which is just wonderful. So I decided to use my leftover mohair scraps and make my own leftover sweater. And my only kind of like requirement for myself as I was knitting this was that I wasn't going to unravel if I didn't like how colors looked together. I put them together beforehand and I was like, okay, these are going to be the main colors, these are going to be the contrast colors, and we're just going to keep knitting until we run out of color and see how it goes. And that's what we did here. So yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with how it turned out. But I've mentioned before, I don't really want to go through the whole pattern writing testing process with this, and because it's a leftover sweater, and I think it would be kind of like a nice thing to put out there for the knitting community with some information about like how much yarn I used in my scrap colors, or like how much you would need in total for the main color and the contrast color. I think I'll just make it a pattern, grade it, and put it out for free on my website and link it here on YouTube. So if you like this sweater, you could potentially knit your own, and that is coming soon. I keep thinking about, as a designer, a lot of people are knitting camisoles and tank tops, or designing camisoles and tank tops at the moment, and I'm kind of like, I have a lot of sweater patterns that I haven't yet graded and am planning to release, and do I release them now or do I wait for fall? So I'm interested in seeing what you guys have to say on this. Like, if I released sweater patterns now, are you knitting sweaters? Like, is this something you would pick up, or is it something that you're like, yeah, just wait until maybe the weather gets colder, like October, November-ish maybe, and then it's something you would pick up and work with? So yeah, let me know in the comments if you want a free pattern in the summer, or if it would be better to hold off until the fall. But anyway, this is going to come out at some point, and now I have mohair all over my face. Oh, great. So I'll show you something next that isn't mohair. It actually is probably the furthest thing away from mohair you can get. Oof, I just knocked over the tripod with my sweater. Or, yeah. This is the Hoppy sweater by Linka Newman, and it is knit in Lättläpi, which is an extremely rustic Icelandic yarn. I know I've done a whole yarn review video on Lättläpi because it's a very fun yarn to try. So if you're interested in knowing more about Lättläpi, I will link that up in the little pop-up that pops up in the video here or here. And you can follow that and you can know more about Lättläpi. But Lättläpi is a really, really nice Icelandic 100% wool yarn. And there are a lot of designers who design these things called turgensers, or trip sweaters, using Lättläpi, and Linka Newman is one of them. So in her latest garment book, which was Vildmarksgensere 2, or like wilderness sweaters, she has this pattern for the Hoppy sweater. And it's actually the one on the front page of the book. So this is knit in kind of a typical Norwegian style. It's knit from the bottom up, and then you knit the sleeves from the bottom up, and then you join and you knit this circular yoke with color work in the round. There isn't any short row shaping. I just kind of blocked it so that the back would be a bit longer. And then you just cast off after the last row. There's no like real neckline or anything. So my one kind of caveat with this sweater is that she wants you to change to a smaller needle size and then cast off. And I'm kind of like, okay, I have a small head and I did not change needle size, and I used a quite stretchy bind off, and it's still a bit hard to get over my head. So I don't think I would recommend for anyone to switch to the lower needle size unless you have a very, very loose gauge, in which case the whole sweater would be kind of messed up, wouldn't it? But yeah. The colors I used, so I don't exactly know what they are by name, but I'll put the Lättläpi, well, no. What I will do is I will link my Ravelry project page, and that has all the Lättläpi color codes if you're interested. I know that like the orange is called apricot, the brown is, I don't know if it's called chocolate brown or something similar. The blue is definitely glacier blue. Heather maybe, and then this is like wheat. So yeah, very, very nice kind of southwestern inspired color palette going on here. And it is a lot of I love wearing Lättläpi sweaters on my outdoor trips. So when I go hiking, when I go skiing, it's nice to have on. I couldn't keep holding it because it was kind of itching through my leggings. Lättläpi is a very, very itchy yarn. So what I do when I wear it is I wear wool long underwear, which I think you're supposed to do anyway. So like when you're in Norway and you go out hiking or you go out skiing, it's usually quite cold. So you have on your wool long underwear layer, and then you start pulling on all your other layers. So if you put a Let Lippy sweater on over like a merino wool undershirt, you're not going to feel any itch. And then you have your hiking pants on typically over your wool leggings, so then you don't feel like any itch there in case your sweater like touches your waistband or anything. So in that way, yes, it is itchy, but it's very, very durable. It's very, very waterproof. It's a great like outer layer almost in a lot of cases, unless it's just straight up like pouring rain, then it's going to get drenched. But otherwise, yeah, Let Lippy is a great yarn for outdoor purposes. Okay, and now moving on to something a bit more luxurious. This is my Mefjord sweater, knit in Cardiff cashmere, which is the softest yarn I have ever felt in my entire life. It is absolutely wonderful. It was just such a lovely experience knitting with this yarn. It's so wonderful to wear this sweater. And because of the natural marling in this colorway, it's the colorway 52, I decided to keep the design. This is one of my own designs, by the way. I decided to keep this design as simple as possible. So it starts at the top, and it's got a folded neckline that you just kind of knit together so that it's seamless. And then you knit ragline increases from the top down with make one left, make one right. Knit the body and the sleeves in the round, and then you end with this fun little cable detail. I don't know if you're picking it up, but I will put a picture here so you can see. So it's this little cable detail that's basically knit the way you would knit a double knit. No, not a double knit. The way you would knit like an I-cord edge, but instead you knit these cables. And I think that's just a really, really fun touch to an otherwise quite standard top-down sweater design. So it's nice because I cropped this sweater a little bit. I made it a bit more cropped than I would usually wear, and I did that because I wanted to wear it over dresses. I thought this would be really, really nice to have over very feminine spring dresses that I can wear in Tromsø. And I wanted this to sit at my natural waistline and look like a little belt. So I think it does just that, and I am so, so proud of how this turned out. And I love holding it and touching it, and it's so nice and soft. But yes, I will be putting out a tester call for this soon because I would love to get this out there and share it with the world. And I think it could even be like an early fall-ish pattern release. So yeah, if you're interested in the Mefjord sweater, keep your eye out on this channel, or subscribe to my mailing list, and there will be a tester call for this. So yeah, that is it's named after this place in Senja, which is a mountain range in the north of Norway. It's where my fiance and I went for our Easter vacation, and we stayed in a place called Mefjord Brygge, which is a little spot on the island. So it's named after that. It's named because I wanted to take the Mefjord sweater there and take some nice photos in front of some snowy mountains and the sea and the fjords and all of that good stuff. So now we're moving on. I think we're a bit more than halfway through. This is the Modius Yule genser that I think you've seen before. I don't know if I wore it for a video when I was talking to you guys, but I've definitely shown you before. So the Modius genser, or the Modius sweater, is probably something you're pretty familiar with if you follow traditional Norwegian color work. So the Modius is this kind of checked design that's traditionally on a drop shoulder sweater. And I think it's quite old now. I think it dates back to the 30s or 40s, but yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. But since then, there have been many variations on the traditional Modius sweater, and the Modius Yule series, or Modius Christmas series, is one of them. So Solnedgang released this kind of booklet last Christmas of Modius sweaters for the whole family that were knit in, I think it's very chunky needles. It uses 9mm needles for men, women, and kids. And they use Solnedgang Koss and Solnedgang Børstet Alpaca. And the way that Solnedgang kits work is that you have to buy enough yarn for at least one sweater in order to get access to the pattern. So they were out of stock of the color that they used in the in the booklet for the contrast color. I think they used like a burgundy. So I thought it would be really fun and kind of contemporary and cool to knit the main body in their off-white colorway and then use like a nice cobalt blue for the contrast color. So I bought that from them. And I think if you've watched our knit and chats, Kevin and I have like a podcast series on YouTube with our knit and chats. And on one of them, I cast on the Modius Yule sweater because I wanted it to be my Christmas knitting project. But I was working on something else. And so time got the better of me. And so I decided to cast it on this year. And it definitely wasn't too late because I got some wear out of this before spring kind of set in. So I think this is really nice. They give you instructions to knit from both the top down and from the bottom up. I chose to knit from the top down because that's just how I prefer to construct my sweaters. But it was such a quick knit. I think I was done in like 2.5 weeks with this entire sweater because 9mm needles. So that is the Modius Yule sweater. And I just love how nice and soft it is. I don't know if I would have worn a traditional Modius, but this one gets a lot of wear. So that's really nice. Okay. I'm trying to like excavate now because my bad organization is catching up to me. So all of this is kind of piling in. But here we are. We've got our sweater. This is the Rewind sweater from Hip Knit Shop, and it's one of the most recent objects I just cast off. This yarn was very graciously gifted to me for a test knit by Hip Knit Shop. And I have all the colorways that I used in my Ravelry project page because I can't remember all the contrast colors off the top of my head, but the main color is icy blue. And this is knit with one strand of hip wool and one strand of hip mohair together on 7mm needles. It is very, very quick to knit. There's no short row shaping or anything, so it's more beginner friendly than, for example, the Farnam sweater. It's very, very wide. It's even wider across than the Farnam sweater for me. So it has a lot of positive ease. I think about over 30 centimeters for sure. So that makes it a very, very cozy sweater. To wear. I wear it as a hiking sweater because I think it's nice. You're able to layer a lot underneath it. Yeah, and I love the patterning on it, like all the different colors and all the different like textures. And I like the construction as well. So she has you knit drop shoulder from the top down. And then you pick up sleeves and knit them in the round. So it's basically seamless, which is how I like my sweater construction. And I also really, really like that because of all the like Fair Isling or like color work in here, it goes so fast. Because you're like, okay, I'll just knit through this chart. And then you're like, okay, well, I'll just knit through the next chart. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's your sleeve. Like it's done. So this just went so fast for me. And it's so comfy and nice to wear. I absolutely love hip wool. I love their color selection. I love how their wool feels. So I definitely recommend trying them out if you haven't. They are a Norwegian-based wool brand. And I'm not affiliated by any of these yarn companies. I just genuinely really like yarn and really like recommending yarn if it's something that like I enjoy knitting with. So yeah, check it out if you want. But I really, really like hip wool. And I already have some Magic Forest Green hip wool in my stash that I will definitely be casting on. But now that I have felt how nice hip wool feels with hip mohair, I think I might just have to buy some hip mohair and hold it with that and maybe try out making my own design with some hip wool and some hip mohair. So that will be on my needles at some point in the future. Okay. Now I've made a mess and I only have one sweater left to show you today, which I have called my magnum opus of knitting. This is my Lillehammer 94 sweater, or my OL Genser 94. It has a bunch of different names on Instagram, but I think the most common one is OL, and that stands for Olympisk. I'm learning Norwegian, but I don't know how to say Olympics in Norwegian, but it's Lekene, which is like the Olympic Games. So that's what OL stands for, and then Genser is sweater. So this is mine. It is so every Olympic year, I think is it just winter or just summer? I don't know. But at least every Winter Olympics, the Norwegian ski team gets their own custom designed Olympic sweater. And it's usually Dalegarn that makes them. I think they're machine made for the team. I mean, surely you can't knit up this many sweaters in probably a larger size than the one I knit that fast. But then they do put out the pattern for knitters who want to make it themselves. And so I picked up the pattern for the OL Genser 94 or 94 and decided to cast on my own. And Inga over at Knitting Traditions actually is making one as well. I don't know if she's finished it. I'm really excited to see if it is done. But yeah, I have finished mine and I love it, even though I didn't construct it the way that the pattern tells you to go about it. I don't really want to go into depth now because I actually want to make an entire video about the process behind this sweater. I know that there is an English version out there somewhere if I can get my hands on it, but I want to try to dig it up and share it with you guys so that you can make it, because I think the English version is out of print. And if not, then I want to kind of take you through how to use Google Translate to make it with the Norwegian pattern, which is a lot of what I used to do actually with patterns when I was first starting to learn Norwegian. And I really, really wanted to knit Norwegian patterns. I was stubborn. I wasn't backing down. So I used Google Translate and like a drops knitting glossary and just figured it out from there. But I want to give you guys some tips about it, and I want to like talk about how I did my construction differently and how I chose the colors and the process of knitting this up. So I'm not going to go too in depth, even though just me saying all that feels like going really in depth. But this is my Olympic Games sweater. So the one thing I do want to tell you guys is that I shortened the main body. So if you look at pictures of this, you'll see that they're often very bunchy around the midsection, and I didn't want that for mine, so I just knit less repeats of the main body pattern. And the colors that I used, I'm going to try to remember off the top of my head. I used kind of like, they call it koksgrå, or like kind of like a charcoaly black. I used ubleket hvit, which I think means unbleached white, something called solgull or sun yellow, klarrød, which is like a very bright red, and then oliven, which is like olive green. But all the official colorways are on my Ravelry project page, and I will link that, and you can also kind of get a bit of insight into how I modified this pattern there. Traditionally, it is supposed to be knit from the bottom up in a tube and then separated here where you start to knit the neckline. So this is the front, so you obviously split here earlier and then split in the back. And then you're supposed to knit the sleeves from the bottom up, and then you're supposed to steek here and then like seam the sleeves to where it's been steeked. And I didn't do that, but I will walk you through what I did later. But I'm so proud of this. I made so many mistakes when I was knitting it. If you can catch any, I don't know. I don't actually have a prize, but I would be very impressed if you can catch any of them. There is a big one. But yeah, I, as I mentioned on one of my last videos, even though I made so many mistakes on this sweater, I am just so proud of myself. I don't know if that feels weird to say. I feel like we should normalize saying that we're proud of ourselves, but I am proud of myself for knitting this sweater, especially with the limited knitting experience that I have. I think sometimes because I love knitting so much and I knit all the time, I kind of let myself forget that like I only ever picked up knitting needles for the first time at the end of 2020, and like I knit my first sweater like at the beginning-ish, like I think it was February, March of 2021. And then I released my first pattern in April 2022. Like it has been such a wild progression. And now I have like 13 sweater patterns out, which is crazy. But like, yeah, I love knitting so much. So it kind of makes sense. But like every now and again, a project kind of makes me take a step back and like go like, oh my gosh, look what you can do. And this is definitely one of them. And this is like, you know, one of those moments where you feel so like, oh my gosh, I made that. Like, how neat. You know, I mean, me of like 5 years ago would be so impressed. So I don't know, it's just, it's nice to let myself feel that now, to be like, oh, you can do some magic. Yeah. I just feel really happy when I look at this sweater and I wear this sweater, and I think that's what knitting is all about. So yeah, I'm definitely enjoying it. It's nice to do something that it fulfills you creatively, and it brings you joy, and it makes you happy. And yeah, maybe it's not the best thing for my wallet, but that's okay. Yeah, nothing good ever is. So yeah, that is my roundup of sweaters from the first trimester of 2023, which feels weird to say in that context, but yeah, the first third of 2023. So yes, I will do another one of these, hopefully in, what is this now, May, June, the end of July, which might seem like a weird time to put stuff out, but like we have our summer vacation booked now, and it's going to be a bit hectic, so I'll see how much I can actually get done, or like how many. I don't think it's going to be this many finished objects, because a lot of this was cheating. It was like rollovers from 2022, so I don't think there will be that many like, you know, finished objects to show you at the end of July. I think it's going to be a bit more chill. Is it July? No, it's not July. It's the end of August, so it'll be around my birthday. But I still don't think I'll have that many new finished objects to show you as this. But it'll be fun to see what I do have, and how like what I knit will differ. Because right now it's a lot of sweaters. So now I'm like, will I keep knitting sweaters? Will I cast on some warm weather knits? I don't know, but I guess time will tell, and I will report back to you. And I really hope you enjoyed seeing what I've knit so far. If you are a returning viewer, I hope that wasn't too boring for you. I did like have a couple insights on everything that I haven't said before. And I would be interested in seeing what your roundup of 2023 so far looks like. What have you been knitting most? Have you been knitting sweaters, or stuffies, or home decor, or like warm weather things more? I would love to know. Have you been knitting for yourself or for other people? I'm very much a selfish knitter, so all of my things have been for me, but I know that's not always the case, and some of you have kinder hearts. So yeah, just leave me a comment and let me know. And if, as always, if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps me out a whole bunch. And if you want to come over and say hi, I am over on Instagram and Ravelry and TikTok as the Strikkechick. And you can also find me on my own website, thestrikkechick.com. Until next time, you guys, happy knitting. Bye.